Hey everyone, and welcome back to our Traveling Couple Wisdom segment. Today we have a new couple, and they're also from two different countries. So I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, I'm Gustavo, and I'm from Brazil.
And I'm Gretchen, and I'm from California.
So how long have you guys been together?
About 3.5 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, January 2016. So yeah.
And how did you meet? Where?
We met online when I was actually living in the States as well. I was studying there. So I was living in Texas at the time, and she was living in California. And we started talking online.
And then after, about a month and a half of talking online every day, I actually drove all the way to Texas, hoping he wasn't an axe murderer. And yeah, it worked out.
It worked out pretty well, yeah.
Well, three years later, I hope it worked out well.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was a good adventure to start with, right?
Yes, it was.
And then how did you decide to start traveling together?
We kind of didn't have a choice,
Yeah,
actually.
we had to.
Yeah.
So.
After I finished my studies in the States, then I had a student visa, so it expired after I was done. And so I couldn't really stay in the States for much longer. And so the only way we could be together was to just keep traveling and just staying on each place for the amount of time the visa.
Like for a tourist visa, like there was nowhere in the world that we could be together for longer than the length of a tourist visa. So usually we don't stay that long though. Usually we stay in each place for a month, but yeah, the 3 to 6 months of a tourist visa is the maximum anywhere in the world. So.
Wow. So how long had you been together when you started traveling?
Not that long.
I think I was finishing my studies, so we were doing a little bit of a long distance at first. For maybe a year and a half?
A little less.
A little less than a year and a half. And then we got together.
2 months when you said that.
Yeah, no. No, not that fast. But
still, it's a big commitment after, it was less than a year and a half from when we first met to when we decided to just see the world together.
Yeah, actually, after we've been dating for a few months, we started talking, it wouldn't it be nice to travel to, Germany or travel to Asia. So we're kind of like, without really knowing, we were already planning a little bit of traveling.
Wow.
It's all right. We got married after a year and a half, so we're the weird ones.
Okay. So you understand then how it's just when you know it's right, you just go with it. And
exactly.
Yeah.
So Gretchen, actually, this one's for you. Was it easy for you to kind of uproot your life in the U.S. so you can be together?
I think it was easier for me than it would have been for a lot of people because basically since I turned 18, I'd been traveling whenever I got the opportunity. And most of that was to Ireland because I'd been doing Irish dancing for most of my life. So basically I turned 18, got a job, and whenever I could afford it, I would go to Ireland for anywhere from a month to 3 months at a time, come back, work more, go to Ireland again. So I think I went there 12 to 15 times. I lost count. So, I was used to being like back and forth from home to other countries. So I think if I didn't have that experience, it would have been a lot harder. But as it was just like, oh, good, here's another adventure. So, yeah.
How was your family? How did your family feel about you when you just, because before they always knew you were going to come back, but now it's like uncertain.
My mom, luckily, absolutely adores Gustavo. Pretty much from the minute I told her that he's an opera singer from Brazil, she's like, oh, he's the one. Okay.
Opera singer? Wow.
Yeah, I think if it had been with anyone else, she would have struggled with it. But given how much she adores him, she is okay with the situation. So, yeah.
And what about your family, Gustavo?
Did they adore her?
Yes, they do. They really like it. For my family, I think it was didn't change much because I was living abroad for about 5 years.
Oh.
So, they were already used of just, Skyping me every once in a while to talk a little bit. So, Skyping me in the States or Skyping me somewhere else, it didn't change as much. As long as we get to travel to Brazil every once in a while to visit them.
And we've actually been doing that more since we started traveling than we did when he was just a student in the US. So I guess from their perspective, it's a good thing, right?
It's been an upgrade.
Yeah.
How do you support yourself on your travels?
I've been doing freelance writing for over a decade now. So yeah, I had a sort of semi-corporate job straight out of high school, and then did it for about 4 years, could not stand it for another day, quit, and was like, okay, now I have to figure out how to support myself, in a way that makes sense for me. So I got into freelance writing not too long after that, which luckily meant that, I had an established history and a base of clients that made it really easy to just do it from anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's awesome.
What about you, Gustavo?
I was just studying full time, doing my post-grad studies. And so I was not sure what I would do after that. And so after I graduated, we figured, she works online. I might as well just take a sabbatical and join her traveling and as we travel, try to figure out how to, get some income.
yeah, like networking with people for his career. And also, actually, little plug here, we started a channel recently where he is singing his cover songs in different countries around the world. So yeah, that's been a really fun project.
Yeah, it's kind of music meets travel, it's mostly focusing on the music, but in the background, we're always outside somewhere in the world.
All right, that reminds me. We were watching some of the YouTube videos yesterday, and actually, I was like, I remember them. I think I watched one of their videos when we were in Bulgaria when I was looking for a restaurant.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yes, we did that one. We didn't think much of that, but after a long time, we realized that video was like the most viewed video that we had for some reason.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about the food in Bulgaria or anything.
So when you do.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like 35,000 views. Like they're onto something.
Right. Yeah, I think a big part of it is that the digital nomad movement doesn't seem like it's really hit Bulgaria yet in the same way that it's hit, Thailand or Indonesia. So yeah, I think there's a lot less content out there about Bulgaria than about a lot of other countries. So yeah, that was a good opportunity.
Yeah.
We're moving to Bulgaria. It's fine, Romania.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, where have you been in the past 2 years?
I guess we can go in order, right?
We can go in order. I think our count is about 20 countries.
I think. Okay, so we left the US. We went to Germany.
Started in Germany,
Morocco.
France, then
Bulgaria. Thailand.
Malaysia, Italy.
India.
Oh yeah, there's Italy.
Yeah.
India.
India. Italy.
Portugal, and then Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, Peru. Then kind of head our way up to Costa Rica, Guatemala, Mexico, then the United States for a little bit.
And then back to Thailand again, back to India again to visit our friends there.
Right.
And
then Croatia, Spain, Chile, and now
back here
to Brazil.
Wow.
Because for us, we usually we're doing one continent at a time, but it's also to offset the costs.
Right.
Does it get more expensive going to Asia, Europe, and such?
For us, I mean, it's been kind of a combination of things. We generally don't go somewhere unless we can find a really good deal on the flight in general, right? So like we got our flights from Rome to Brazil the first time we came here for $200 each for that segment. And so then we planned everything else around that. We were like, okay, we need to be in Rome in time to catch these flights. So
yeah, find the cheap flights first and then figure out where you're traveling after that.
Yeah, but then other times,
sometimes things don't work. We had originally planned on going from France to Turkey. And then there was some problem with, American visas in Turkey. So we had to go to Bulgaria instead. And we just went to Bulgaria because that was the cheap flight that we couldn't find at the time. So we figured, well, I guess we're going to Bulgaria then.
Right.
So kind of be flexible in that way.
Yeah, and then like we had planned to go to India after Turkey, but since we weren't in Turkey, we couldn't use our flights to India. So that's like we ended up going to Thailand then instead and sort of working our way backwards. And it worked out for the best because it meant we were in India for Holi. And we got to celebrate it with this local family and community instead of during the touristy version of it. So that was amazing.
Yeah,
and we would have missed that if we had had our original plans.
It's perfect timing.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of paint thrown in your face?
Yes.
And rubbed on our teeth.
Just even in our teeth.
Yeah, like I didn't know that was a thing, but they would dip their hands in color and then like force their hands in your mouth and scrub your teeth with color.
I think at that time they were just messing with us.
Probably. They're like, oh, look at these tourists. They don't know any better.
Did you guys live together before you started traveling together?
Briefly.
Just for what, a few months after I was finished in Texas, then I met her in California. But by then we already knew that we were traveling.
Yeah, so we had to commit to traveling before we had lived together.
Yeah.
So how was that transition?
It was super smooth, I think. Well, with the long distance, it sucked because it was long distance, but we were, talking to each other every day. And so I feel like we already knew each other well enough that, yeah, it was almost the same thing being together.
Yeah, there weren't any big surprises.
No surprises there, no.
So nobody like leaving all the dirty clothes on the floor and
I do that, but it wasn't a surprise. I warned her from the beginning.
Yeah, I think we had enough time during our long distance time where we would pretty much just interview each other and see, and ask, well, what's the situation with, doing dishes and stuff like that. So we already knew exactly what we were getting into.
We didn't lie about it.
No, we were pretty straightforward and honest about everything.
When it comes to traveling, what's one word you would use to describe each other? Or to describe the traveling, actually?
They're traveling with each other. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out one word for her because if I can find, ESL, right? It's also, it's hard for me to speak in English. But she's just so on top of everything. She's just, I think it's security, maybe.
I'm the organizer.
She is very organized. If there's any problems, she is very rational. She knows how to deal with it. So it's very smooth.
And I would say for me, like describing with Gustavo or describing traveling with Gustavo, I would say he's laid back, right? Like you make me more relaxed about things. He tries to convince me that like, just let go. If people are rude, it's okay. You don't have to like make a point of calling them out on it. So like I'm the organizer and he's the relaxed one, I think.
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good.
But it's a good pairing.
It's a good pairing. I think it works very well, yes.
The yin and the yang. Have you had any one situation that really left an impact like, oh, I don't want to go through that again?
I feel like in general, both of us are pretty good about letting things like that go, right? Like we don't tend to stress about that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we had a situation, for instance, very recently where our flight was delayed for about, 9 hours?
And it was in this tiny airport in Croatia where there was literally not even space to sit on the floor, nevertheless on a chair.
Yeah. So we were there all day. And when they said, yeah, your flight is delayed, they didn't give us any information. So we had to wait to just get information about when the flight would take off. And I think after a while, we were just like, okay, this is what's happening. Let's just really get to know this airport, I guess.
And then being the organizer, I started Googling things and I was like, oh, cool. We're each entitled to 250 euros because it's so late. Score, right?
Well, so make the best out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think other situations, at one point in Morocco, we came across a really bad problem with bed bugs also. So that was a nightmare.
Like we were both covered in bites. Just it looked like a huge rash because there were so many bites all over our entire bodies. It was bad.
So yeah, that took us a few days to sort that out, to find new places and to kind of get rid of a lot of our clothes that were, just bad bugs.
Did you have to throw everything away, or?
Yeah, we did to be safe because we didn't want to be dragging the infestation with us and infecting every new place we went. And we thought, that would be really horrible behavior of us. So better safe than sorry. So we just got rid of everything that wasn't plastic, basically, and started over.
Yeah.
You guys usually stay in Airbnbs, hotels?
We were in an Airbnb for that. And so we contacted them, and honestly, I mean, we're not sponsored, but we love Airbnb.
They were amazing. They really took care of us.
They did. They were very good, very on top of things. And
so that convinced us to stick with them because that was early in our travels. And just knowing that they had our backs that well convinced us that, to keep going with them. So I think other than really short stays, when we sometimes stay in a hotel, if we're in a country for 1 or 2 nights, it's been all Airbnb. And we've had only 2 other serious issues with apartments. And both times they completely had our back and got us out of there quickly and made sure we were taken care of. So yeah, we're really impressed with them.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah.
So you heard them Airbnb sponsor these 2. They love you.
That would be nice.
So while you're on the road, what's your biggest reason to argue?
We don't really argue that much. I don't think so.
Like, I think if we argue at all, it's very minor, and it's usually because we're in a bad mood about something else, and it doesn't take us very long to be like, oh, we're just taking it out on each other. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
Because, like, we don't actually have anything between us that we argue about, right? It's just like, oh, it's hot, and we're tired, and we haven't eaten, and we're grumpy, things like that. But we don't actually have any real points of contention. We're boring that way.
From other couples, pretty much all of them have come to the same conclusion. It's usually the environment, not each other.
Right.
Yeah, I think from the very beginning, we're very good at, working together. We know that traveling, it's not always just, the Instagram moments, is not just the awesome parts of it. We know we are prepared that, things will go wrong sometimes. And from the beginning, we were always on the position of, working together to solve things.
And Gretchen, has it been, you said you're the one working at the moment and you work online. Is it difficult to have him around all the time while you're trying to work? Like, is it good? Do you tell him, like, can you please go to a cafe?
Well, it's interesting because I'm a hardcore introvert, and usually I cannot spend more than like 3 or 4 hours a day around people without needing a day off to recharge. But somehow Gustavo doesn't drain my introvert battery. So that part is really good. But when I'm working, I need to focus, like exclusively, completely focus. So what we try to do is rent Airbnbs where we have a bedroom and then a living room that's separate from it rather than just a studio. So nobody has to actually go out if they don't feel like it. We can just, go into separate rooms, close the door, and get stuff done.
On your social media stuff you work together on, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you travel together, live together, work together. Has that ever been an issue? Like, oh, you're suffocating me, or like separating the work life from the relationship?
The only issue really is that we already talk about, when we settle down somewhere and we both have jobs outside the house, we're going to have to like work apart from each other, and there'll be like 10 hours a day that we don't see each other and don't talk. And how is that going to work?
Yeah, because so far it hasn't worked. It hasn't been like that, right? So far. We were first at long distance relationships. So after we got together, it's like, okay, great. We don't need to be apart anymore. So we got used to it. Now it feels like it would be weird to, go out and not see each other for that long.
And like, imagine having our projects, our work lives completely separate from each other, right? Like, we're not working on a project together. It's going to be weird.
Yeah, I guess we just got so used to it.
What is something you do to separate like all the like YouTube videos, all that work you do together from your relationship? Like, do you do date nights? Do you take a separate trip? Like, what kind of things do you do?
I think for us, because we, we try not to take anything for granted. We know that how lucky we are to be in different countries all the time. I feel like every night is date night. We either whether we're eating out in nice places or just being lazy and eating at home together. It always feels like a date night. So on that aspect, I think it's been very nice.
And I think one of the good parts is that we really enjoy collaborating and working together. So it doesn't feel like a chore to have to do work. It's just like a fulfilling project that we're working on together, right? So very rarely do I feel like, oh, we need to not work. Right? Don't you think?
Yeah. Sometimes doing, social media gets really tiring because it's a lot of work. So we took several months off of that. Almost a year, right?
Yeah.
We were just like, this is just too much. Let's just enjoy traveling. Let's stop it. And so for a long time, for over a year, I think we were just enjoying traveling. But as you're traveling, you want to take pictures. You want to do some videos to remember everything. And so it's like, well, we're taking pictures. We might as well post them. We might as well just put a little bit more effort and make videos again.
And it's nice to have a sense of purpose too. I think it would be hard for me to just travel and not have a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
So, and then in terms of date nights, I feel like in each, I don't think we've like specifically said, let's do this, but it works out such that basically in each country or city we go to, we try to go to one really nice splurge restaurant because we're both really into food. So we love eating street food most of the time and experiencing the local cuisine. But then we also like to go to, one nice Michelin star sort of restaurant and experience, local flavors in a higher end setting and, what really creative chefs can do with all of the native ingredients. So, and like we never really we don't take videos of that ever. That would be really awkward.
Yeah, we just enjoy the moment there.
Yeah, so at least we get that for like a specific date night, right?
Yeah.
Like that Gustavo said that eating at home is lazy.
Well, yeah. because that's true. Usually, you wouldn't think it in that way, but when you're traveling, you kind of feel guilty not to go out and explore every day, right?
Yeah.
So for us, we stay in each place. We try to stay for at least a month, so we give ourselves long enough that if we don't go out a day because we stay at home and work, it's not like we're missing a lot. We'll have more time. But I think I still feel kind of guilty to feel like, oh, let's just stay at home. Let's not go out today and eat out. Let's just get something and bring it in.
And also, I mean, in places where we don't speak the language at all, it can be so exhausting, or, speak minimal language. It's exhausting just to try to get food because we often, we try to stay not in the super touristy areas. So when we were in Thailand for the first time, we were in this residential neighborhood where people were always trying to sneak pictures of us because, we're the only tourists around at all. And so nobody spoke English. We barely spoke any Thai, just a few words. And so trying to get food was, it's really emotionally exhausting because there's often no pictures on the menu and, they're asking you questions and you're like, yeah, we're ignorant tourists, sorry. Just, shrugging and surprise us.
You look at the cart, of the food that they have and you have no idea what it is. So it's like, what are we getting here? So sometimes... Right. We did that a little bit. We wanted to try as much different things as possible. So sometimes we just couldn't decide what's the best approach to it. It's like, do we just point and try to eat whatever that is, not knowing what it is? I think sometimes we ate stuff that we still don't know what we ate.
Yeah,
it's like, it was good. I
have no idea. There was something that was like fermented tuna wrapped in sweet rice is my best guess, but I don't know.
No idea.
Maybe you can go to the other tables and can I have that one?
Right.
I'll have what they're having.
Yeah, done that too.
Yes.
So, what, I guess that's Gretchen, what would you say is Gustavo's travel strength and his weakness? What do you think?
Again, I think his strength is just being able to be relaxed and take things as they come and shrug things off, which is interesting because at home, that's the way I am. But when traveling, I am, much more organized, and I want to make sure that we have our flights out of a country before we try to fly in, just in case they ask if we have onward flights, even though it's not technically required.
Mhm.
And I want to have a spreadsheet with all of the information of where we're staying and what's the confirmation number and blah, blah, blah. So yes, while traveling, for sure, his strength is being laid back and going with the flow and helping me do that too. Weakness? I guess it's just the flip side of that, right?
Just the same thing. It's the strength and the weakness.
So his strength is he's too handsome. His weakness, he's too handsome.
That too.
What about you, Gustavo?
Yeah, I think it goes the other answer too, that her strength is probably how grounded she is, and how good she is at dealing with problems. If something goes wrong, she's very good at dealing with it. She can be very rational, and she's not emotional at all. So it's not like freaking out about anything. She's just like, well, okay, let's do this then, and then solve the problem. Now the weakness, I would have to think a lot more about it to try to figure out an answer for that.
I can give you one.
What was that?
That's a smart man.
It's just that I'm not good at plans changing, right? Because I'm so much about being organized when we travel that if plans change, not so if it's an emergency and we have to change our plans, that's fine. I'm on top of that. But if we're going to meet up with people and do such a thing, and then they're like, oh, actually, why don't we all meet in this other city on this other day? I'm like, no, there's a plan. It's organized. I would say that's my weakness.
I guess, yeah, it hasn't happened that much, so.
As long as he's okay with it, that's all that matters.
Right.
With at the end of the night.
Yeah, like we say, right? It's we can be having fun, or we can be trying to deal with some challenges, but as long as we're together, I think it's all good. It's all worth it. It's all part of this great adventure that we're going through.
Now, you're both from two very different, I guess, cultural backgrounds. I mean, the U.S. is very individualistic. Brazil is a lot more family-oriented. How has that played on your relationship?
Well, I think most of the time we're just by ourselves anyway, so we're just doing our thing. When we come visit my family in Brazil, I know it's a lot for her, a lot of energy to try to deal with all these people speaking in a language that she doesn't completely understand. She understands a little bit of Portuguese. She keeps asking me to teach her more, but I try to make sure that it's not overwhelming. A lot of people going out all the time with all these Brazilians speaking Portuguese all the time, being loud and very, very a lot of energy. Yeah.
I remember the first time I was really around his family was actually in the States, and at that time I didn't understand Portuguese at all, and it was his parents and his sister came to visit, and we all went to Chicago together. And I was like, why is everybody fighting all the time? Because they were all these really loud voices and animated and just always on, talking over each other. And I come from a more waspy background where, everyone is just polite and waits their turn to talk. And so, yeah, not understanding Portuguese, I honestly thought that they were all just arguing all the time. And it was super uncomfortable, being in a restaurant and they're all, as far as I could tell, arguing and yelling at each other.
Yeah, and I was just telling her, no, they're just talking. It's just how they talk.
Trying to decide what to order.
Right.
No big deal. So, yeah, I think once I understood that, it was a lot more comfortable, for sure.
Yeah. But most of the time, yeah, we're just traveling by ourselves. And I think we enjoy we enjoy the what's the word?
Solitude together.
Yeah, the space.
Yeah. But like, I just want to say, because now I sound like I'm trash talking your family. Like his whole family, they're such amazing people. And it turns out his mom speaks German and I speak a bit of German. So we've been able to talk a bit that way. And his sister has learned so much English. And like, they're just honestly amazing, wonderful people. Like I adore them. So yeah, it's really nice. Like I enjoy being around them, especially the more I get to know them. And you get along with them.
Gustavo, you already studied in the U.S. a bit, so I guess you were a little used to it. But how was it, just this U.S. culture of everybody on their own? And
yeah, it was interesting. I think, being from Brazil, also Western culture, I think there wasn't a lot of culture shock when I went to the States. It's more, daily life things like, wow, there's always so much space in the States, that the buildings are so much bigger and spaced out and everyone can afford cars to drive around. So that was the more of a difference to me. But, dealing with people in the States, everyone was just so receptive and friendly, and it was really nice.
Like he's making an interesting point that Brazil doesn't really have the culture of idealizing the lone wolf and the self-sufficiency the way in the US. It's idealized to be able to like go out on your own and chop trees and build a cabin and like that same pioneer self-sufficiency mindset, right? How was that for you?
I think it was just interesting for me to hear how people refer to their families, because I was studying there, so I was mostly with grad students, and most of them would go home on the holidays to visit their family, and they would come back saying, that was nice, but it was good. It was just a week. Couldn't handle my family after that. It's too much. And yeah, that was very different for me. On the holidays, I get to see, I have a huge extended family. I get to see everyone. Is just so much fun. So it was interesting to see. It was people get really tired of all the family time really fast.
Yeah, I remember commenting to him early on when he was Skyping his family. I was like, oh, you actually like talking to your family all the time. Right? Because that's such a different thing than in the US, where people are like, oh, I have to call my mom every week. It's so annoying. And here he's Skyping his family like every other day and enjoying it. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like it was just a different cultural perspective.
Right.
Yeah, I get that. I'm the same way. It's like, oh, I have to call my mom again. Oh, I have to every single day she has to call her mom and dad. I was like, how can you enjoy talking every single day?
Right.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess we're both lucky, right? Because like I enjoy talking to my mom too. Like we've traveled with her twice and it was good, So, but yeah, like as a cultural thing, for sure, it was very different to see that as opposed to most other late 20-somethings.
But wasn't it weird for you, Gustavo? Because, I guess you missed your family and then people come back from seeing their family for a week when you haven't seen yours in like months.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty funny. It was interesting. But yeah, nowadays I think it's a lot easier for people who are traveling because of Skype, because of the technology that you get to actually see them and talk to them face to face. Well, seeing their faces. So I think if it was, 20 years ago, it would have been very different.
And Gretchen, you can call yourself an introvert. What about you, Gustavo? Are you the opposite spectrum? Are you an introvert too? And if you're not an introvert, has that hurt your relationship? Has that been tough on your relationship? Like you want to go out and party, she doesn't?
No, we're very much on the same page. I'm also an introvert. I think sometimes we like going out and meeting people and spending some time with them. But after a few hours, I think we're ready to just be at home, be by ourselves and chill.
I think if anything, surprisingly, Gustavo is more introverted than I am, which I didn't really know was possible. But like, there's times where I'm like, I want to go make friends. Like in Germany, I was like, I want to make friends. And you were like, let's just go eat food.
Right.
So
Food is important.
We can make friends with food. Come on. So, do you guys have like a piece of advice you give to a couple? What piece of advice would you give to a couple that's looking to start traveling together? You know, the 24/7 life.
I think I would say, first of all, do some trials first, travel a little bit, see how it goes together, for shorter travels before committing to, year-long travels like that.
although I wonder if that might backfire. Like if you commit to a year of traveling together, I feel like it might be how people say once you commit to marriage, you don't argue about the small stuff anymore because you know you're going to have to wake up next to this person in 10 years. So like, do you really want to fight about which way the toilet paper goes? So like, I wonder if if you commit to traveling for a year, you might let go of the small things better because you're like, well, we're going to be together next month anyway, as opposed to, if you're like, okay, we're going to do a 7-day road trip to test whether we get along, then there's like so much pressure on it, right? To see if you get along. And then with that amount of pressure, I wonder if you wouldn't argue more.
I think either way, I think the important thing is to figure out your limits there, figure out how much time you like spending together, how much time you need to yourself, and always respecting those limits, I think.
And I would say the same, like to expand on that and take that concept, but apply it to the traveling itself. So like, don't try to, go to 5 museums one day and then go hike up a mountain the next day. Basically, don't treat it as if, if you're going somewhere for a week, then yes, you're going to go sightseeing every day. But I would say when you're traveling long term, think of it more as if you're at home and just your home changes every month, and live more of, your normal lifestyle so that you don't burn yourself out in the first month.
That's
right?
good, yes.
Well, that's good advice. I like that you each had your own perspective on that. Usually it's just the couple agreed, but it's actually better to have the diversity to it.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for being on today.
Yeah,
And
thank you for having
before we wrap things up, what are your social media accounts people can reach you at if they have more questions or advice, needed more advice?
We're at Escape Visa on both YouTube and Instagram, and then Gustavo's new channel that I mentioned is on YouTube primarily at Gustavo Steiner.
It's just my name, Gustavo Steiner, and then you'll find me on YouTube too. Yes. But for traveling, our mainly channel is the Escape Visa.
Name Escape Visa, was it because of the student visa thing?
That name our friends actually suggested. They came up with it and they said, you're traveling, just take this name and use it.
Yeah, they had actually reserved the domain and the social media a few years ago, planning to use it themselves and never got to it. And they are amazing branding experts, and they do a lot of traveling with their dogs. They're at Husky Squad. If anyone wants to go check them out, they're amazing. And so we were talking to them and we were like, yeah, we just don't know what to call it. And we had some ideas and they were not very good ideas. And they were like, we have this domain and all the social media handles attached to it. Why don't you guys just take this and run with it? And like, it really worked for us because like it is escaping the whole student visa thing, but also escaping the hassle of trying to get a visa in another country. And
it's a visa to escape and go somewhere else.
Yeah, so it works on a lot of levels.
Awesome.
I like it.
Yeah, that's genius.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks a lot. It was nice to meet you.
And if anybody has more questions, head to the social media, leave comments below, and we'll get them on with your questions, or we'll just send it to them if they don't want to see us again. I don't know.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on.
Take care, guys. Bye.